So you really have to have a select committee in the Congress and a special office in the White House to really master all this information and unpack it, and then take the action to stand down these malicious programs. And that is going to be a very heavy lift and a very dangerous operation.
The only way you're going to get to it is somebody at that executive level that says enough is enough, cut the money off, bring these people in, let's go.
Maybe just give them a threat, a very light threat. Let them know, like, this is not to be talked about any further. And if you do, something can happen.
You're either on the side of the law or you're not. And if not, which we can prove they are, you strip them of all that cover.
All we need is one to be accurate. And this whole concept of UFO crash retrieval non-existing completely falls apart.
They're doing stuff for spite, they're doing stuff to protect certain individuals or certain industries, and it's detrimental to all of us.
Oh yeah, people are all talking about World War III and all that. Well, you know, if we don't change the trajectory we're on, we're going to be in a big problem. Nobody with any sense wants fortune and glory dealing with this. That's the mistake that they all make.
Blake Cousins, along with Dr. Stephen Greer. Asymmetric Disclosure has made its world presence. It's available right now, streaming across the planet. The link is below. We're going to be getting into detail with regards to what's going on with disclosure as of right now, today, and the significance of asymmetric disclosure and the impact it's going to be making on the world as it's being seen right now by a lot of people, let me tell you. And it's available. So don't forget asymmetric disclosure. Check it out. We're here with Dr. Stephen Greer. We've got a lot of things to discuss today. But first off, Steve, it's good to be with you.
Good to see you. Yeah, it's been a crazy ride the last few months.
Oh, yeah. It's been a while since we last spoke. I saw you that you're in Mexico. You've been traveling across the planet. But oh, man, exciting times. First thing I want to ask, though, is asymmetric disclosure. You kind of dubbed the documentary that name. What's the significance behind the title and what it refers to in the film, Asymmetric Disclosure?
Yeah, well, asymmetric means that it's not coming from the whole initiative for disclosure, which actually began in 1993 when I briefed the CIA director for Bill Clinton, has been a citizen-led effort by people who are whistleblowers and intel sources for our organization, the Disclosure Project. So having founded the whole disclosure movement in the 90s, the way this has evolved is we're now at a position where major law enforcement are engaged, some members of Congress and people in the White House. But to really light a fire, let's say, to get this going, and this is true of almost anything that happens on the federal level, there has to be a asymmetric disclosure that comes from whistleblowers who come forward with increasingly definitive evidence and testimony, and preferably hard evidence. So as many of you know, there was a group that was teed up to do that late last year and early this year, prior to the inauguration of the new administration. And those people were basically diverted and convinced not to do that because they were convinced it would be told it would be catastrophic disclosure and not asymmetric disclosure. So I argue that in fact it has to be asymmetric to start with, because otherwise the status quo is going to prevail. Plus, this corrupt criminal organization that's embedded throughout government will intercept any efforts by the Congress or the Pentagon or the White House, who are well-intended people, and divert them into blind alleys and non-productive pursuits, which is what's been going on recently. And this we'll get into a moment, because this is going to also turn into a serious criminal investigation of some people who have been doing this, that we now have directly from a member of Congress to me, where they have been doing things to thwart and disrupt federal investigation, which are major felonies. So I'm going to drop some bombshells on this like you'll never have heard before.
Wow. A criminal investigation. This is something you've been talking about. All these programs have been illegally being operated
Correct.
not under any oversight by the president or Congress.
Correct.
These people are that you're going to be dropping names with regards to this criminal action. Should they be worried?
Yes. Definitely, there are multiple criminal investigations already going based on the intel that we've been able to provide to federal investigative authorities. The conclusion is a big point, has been reached that the operations, some call them legacy ones, have been going on for 80, 70, 80 years, dealing with UAP, UFO, extraterrestrial reverse engineering, have been run illegally and are part of a huge criminal organization. In other words, what's commonly termed in federal criminal law a RICO, racketeering, influence, corrupt organization. That has been concluded by some members of Congress that I've spoken to, as well as by federal law enforcement. So this is very serious. The crimes range from murder and targeted killings, kidnapping, abductions, blackmail, bribery, embezzlement of public funds in the billions, if not trillions of dollars, murder, and treason. So that's the short list of serious crimes that have been committed by this transnational criminal organization, and they are very much aware that this is being pursued. The problem is, politics of this are such that pressure can be exerted through blackmail files, which I know who in the federal government have a blackmail file on them, and there are. I'm not going to go into it. Law enforcement knows this. And what's in those files, and it's bad. And what that means is that certain key people in both political and non-political positions in the federal government, but in key positions, can be manipulated and can stop any investigations or have it go to full resolution by having these criminal operations ceased and taken down. So we're going to launch effective this week. I'm calling it the Campaign for Disclosure. And we kick it off with this film and another one that we're going to release in the fall. I'm working on with another group. And this is going to be a campaign that will then, we hope, lead to enough pressure to get this resolved, but also to get people to come forward and release what should have been released before January 20th, when the new president was sworn in. And that is a big collection, a cache of evidence and hard proof of all of this that they are in possession of, but were persuaded to hold it back. All right. So I think that the only way this is going to get resolved is asymmetric disclosure, which means a group of concerned citizens on the right side of the law and on the right side of history, to be blunt, moving and bringing this out that then forces the issue in front of the Congress and the White House and law enforcement, literally at the level of the Attorney General and the Department of Justice, where it cannot be swept under the carpet anymore. I don't think that, knowing what I know, and I can only talk about a little bit of it, being on the inside of all those efforts, that there is a big risk of it being diverted off into a dead end. And the only way that's not going to happen is that it squarely gets put out into the public, and that's going to take some very courageous whistleblowers, not just with testimony, but with the hard evidence. And I mean schematics, documents, proof, images, video, reverse engineering material, all that. Now, we're talking to people like that. But of course, we know that wet works or assassinations have been engaged. Luckily, we do know the names of the people in a certain executive level of a section of the CIA, as well as one of the major aerospace companies, of the people responsible for these targeted killings. Those names have been turned over to law enforcement. This is serious. And we're talking extrajudicial murders in the United States. So these are serious allegations I'm making. I do not make them without having full knowledge of the wherefore and who and how. And so this, however, as atrocious as these crimes are, surrounding the whole UAP issue and the secrecy that has evolved around it since the late 50s, frankly, could still all be stopped. Because let's not forget, President Clinton back in the 1990s had Team Red. That was to do exactly what we're doing now after he got all this information from Project Starlight, which is the predecessor to the Disclosure Project that I was head of, and from people who I was working with back then. And it got stopped dead in its tracks. And most of the people involved were either killed or absorbed into this illegal transnational criminal organization, what I call the TNCO, that is this global operation running these covert programs, not just here, but abroad. So this is a global criminal investigation. And as a RICO, a racketeering influence corrupt organization, you can look up the RICO Act from the early 1970s. It was set up to take down the mafia, but it's used in other things where there's a larger corrupt criminal conspiracy that is of particular interest to the federal government. So that's what needs to happen. It is what's beginning to happen. But what we as citizens have to do, because I have no official standing in the government at all. I'm a complete, proud to say, outsider, contrary to popular belief amongst idiot UFO conspiracy circles. And the people are going to have to weigh in on this. But the way we do it is that we keep this pressure going in the media, with the films, with the podcasts, with information coming out, but also requesting these sort of whistleblowers with evidence to come forward now, because I can connect them directly to the federal law enforcement officials that can give them protection and immunity from prosecution and secure those secrets and that evidence. We have that in place right now as I'm speaking. So that's why this asymmetric disclosure is really about doing this from outside the bureaucracy of government, but where I have contacts into the, I call them the white hats, the good guys in government and law enforcement and military and special forces who really want to see this resolved. They are completely 100% on the side of disclosure. So we need to move forward, and that's why asymmetric disclosure, meaning it coming from outside the normal channels in government, is so important. I don't think it'll happen without it being asymmetric.
Well, you know, it's amazing that the front line, it's so dangerous. Disclosure is dangerous. And people, the wet works programs and the missing people, or the, murder side, as you call it. Let's just look at one clip from asymmetric disclosure. Again, it's available right now. The link is below. We actually dropped the price more than half, and it's for rental right now. So you guys go out and watch it. Let's take a look at this clip when you talk about the dangers of disclosure. Watch this.
This whole subject, UFOs, ETs, that's not the big issue. It's the technology. It's a science and technology story, because you're talking about bringing out science, technology, information that would alter the world forever in a very good way, but it would terminate $1,000 trillion worth of assets: corporate, oil, gas, coal, jet engines, rockets, car engines. All of it's obsolete. So for that, people are killed for a lot less than that. So that's the big problem. And these inventors, just don't understand that. Now, the CIA director understood, but he still wanted to play the, spy versus spy game. The mistake he made was not setting up a system so that if anything happened to him, that technology on all of it would hit the internet and hit the public. If you disappear, you're the tree that fell in the woods and nobody ever heard about. It's a problem. And what good does that do? He lost his life and this technology didn't get out. So,
who coined the dead man's trigger
me
phrase? That was yours?
Mm-hmm.
And how many people are in your connection of circles? If something were to happen to you and you release this information, How many people?
All right, we're back with Dr. Stephen Greer. That's a quick clip from Asymmetric Disclosure. We're going to be sharing more clips in this podcast. And when you support and watch this, it supports disclosure and the efforts that Dr. Stephen Greer is going through. Let me tell you, it's not easy getting to the information and bringing forth the names. It's interesting. Just I think it was last night, Russ Coulthart, he now agrees with you. The Tic Tac is made by Lockheed Skunk Works. You discussed this in the documentary about these black budget programs working with exotic technology. What do you make of this kind of transition of Russ's statements now aligning with your thoughts on the Tic
Well,
Tac?
look, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, not their own set of facts. I'm quoting Senator Patrick Daniel Moynihan from New York from back in the 70s and 80s. I possess the facts. For the most part, people have opinions. And I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just saying, when I said in 2017, 18, that is a Lockheed device, I knew for a fact it was from sources who are in the system and where we have documented. If you look at we have a very interesting book that we just released. I did with Michael Schratt, and this book has the Tic Tac cases all the way back to 1960s, where this was operational. 60s. Everyone should get this from drstephengreer.com. It's available, and it's paperback and hardback, and it's an illustrated book of all these crash retrievals in major cases, right? So the other thing, and if you can hand me this, Raven, the briefing document for the president is also available. Now, some of it's redacted, but the briefing document is also available at our site, and it has all the key information that's been given to the Oversight Committee, Senate Intelligence and Armed Services, as well as the House Oversight and the White House personnel, very senior people. And that's available to everyone to read. Now, it's about 350 pages. Obviously, most, people in an executive level aren't going to read all of that, but we've also done a very short summary at the beginning of it. So that whole document, for the first time, we've made available to the public, and it makes a great compendium to asymmetric disclosure because it has everything in it. Now, we all know it's very politically incorrect to read, and nobody reads anymore, but if you are someone who likes to read, there's everything you want to know in there, including the list of the 150 some black sites, and the key ones that have been used where covert operations and where aerospace manufacturing plants are located. It has everything in there that anyone would really want to know. The only thing that's been redacted from what was actually provided to the White House and key oversight committees was the list of names that are people who don't want to be known publicly, but are willing to be intel sources and whistleblowers privately. So I make a distinction between the relatively small 10% or so of whistleblowers who are willing to stick their necks out and be known publicly, versus the ones who have come forward and whose backgrounds we've checked and want to give information. Those names are unredacted in the full briefing document. But obviously, and when people say, please keep my name private, I do. And this is what this looks like. It's available in hardback or paperback, and everyone should get this. It's a great read and compendium to the film, in my opinion, and really should be looked at together.
Both all the information that's being put forth in this podcast right now. Absolutely. I urge everybody to read, to watch, to digest, because the information, it's so mind-blowing. You really got to study and take your time to wrap your mind about how big this is all.
Huge story.
It's the biggest story of mankind. This is what was kind of interesting in the documentary. And it plays out in real time, where you're talking about the false flag invasion and this effort to scare the public. And it would be this kind of look of, ET. And right after you said that, within within a week or so of filming the documentary, and we showcase it within a week of your statement, you bring forth basically fortune telling because a drone thing happened in New Jersey
Right,
while all this
right,
was going on.
right.
Explain to me, some people, Russ is saying it's from China. You were saying that this is all an inside job, but again, it's not an individual country. This is transnational. Can you go into a little bit more detail about
Right.
what happened over New Jersey in the United States?
Yeah, well, that entire episode was because the group that was going to defect with all the asymmetric disclosure evidence that were convinced not to. That was done as a false flag and a testing of media, but as also as a diversion, a panic-inducing diversion in advance of that. Remember, that was all going on November, December. The plan was prior to January 20th to release all of that, and that got diverted and put into a blind alley, a dead end, which we were not happy with. Law enforcement nor I were happy with that, but that's what happened. Now, I think that what you need to really understand about that is that all of them were man-made. They were from various places. And when you start talking about a transnational organization with these assets, it means it goes beyond international geopolitical boundaries. So I've always said when I go into a skiff or a meeting with people up on the Hill or anywhere else, I go look at here's a picture of the Earth. And there are the political lines between Russia and China or US and Canada. Erase them. This organization operates with alacrity and freedom across all those boundaries. So to say that they're from China or they're from a covert cell within the United States that's treasonous, or from Russia or from United Kingdom, or it's an irrelevant distinction. It's a distinction without any significance, which is something our political leaders have yet to grasp, frankly, because this organization simply doesn't recognize the authority of any national government, including that of the United States and the president and the Congress. If they did, they would not be working in a criminal fashion outside the rule of law, which I've stated has been the case since 1993, when I first learned that the president and the CIA director were actively blocked from knowing about the subject. As soon as I knew that, it was the easiest thing in the world for me to connect those dots and go, well, here's the evidence that this is real and it's going on. You know, my uncle had his whole career at Northrop Grumman. And yet, the president and the CIA director are being blocked. The only explanation for that. And of course, then I later found that key oversight committees and chairmen that I dealt with in the 90s, key people in the Pentagon, senior most people in military intelligence, like the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, were being blocked from this information. I concluded by 1997 and wrote a memo to the government, this is a criminal organization, it's illegal, all their clearances are voided, all their security clearances are voided because they're criminal. We're going to bring out anything we can, including documents and testimony, and if we could, material, and it's not in violation of any national security laws. And listen, anyone who's out there who's a whistleblower, listen carefully. Every single person in the US government, legal, agrees with what I just said, from the top down. Everyone. That these programs are illegal, therefore you are not bound by your non-disclosure agreement, because that agreement is attached to a criminal, treasonous, unconstitutional program. End of discussion. And that was the assessment we made almost 30 years ago. So my conclusion had been reached 32 years ago in 1993. Now, over the decades, there is a group of people in government, both at the national security and law enforcement level, but also political level, that have concluded this as well, because enough evidence has been provided that that is the case. And the amount of monies that have been embezzled are mind-boggling. So the false flag operations are done to just divert and confuse people just trying to get their head around this. And what happens, I mean, I won't say which chairman of a key committee in the Senate said this, but he basically was so fed up with the information versus the disinformation and the confusing sort of avalanche of conflicting data, that he threw his arms up in the air and said, I'm done with this. I'm not even going to look into it anymore. That is a strategy. That is a specific strategy, and it's worked well for 50, 60 years. So we have to bring clarity and evidence to this. But the problem is, and this is a very big thing I'm about to say, a very big announcement, and I don't do it lightly. There are people who are identified with the UFO subject who I have had confirmed directly in the last 2 or 3 weeks from a member of Congress in a key committee investigating this, that have deliberately gone up to these key members of Congress and apparently people at Aero and the Pentagon and other offices, stating that I, Dr. Stephen Greer, am a Russian espionage agent and a Mossad agent. This is false, but it's criminal. And so we've run this up the flagpole into law enforcement and attorneys, and the people, all of you listening will guess who they are, who have been saying this, are guilty of multiple federal criminal offenses which have been referred to the FBI, and I am insisting be pursued and run to ground. What am I saying? I'm saying that the people who are going up to Capitol Hill and in the circles in the White House saying this have done so for the purpose of blocking the whistleblowers we have and the evidence we have from getting to the very people who have been tasked by the federal government to look into it. That is a major federal crime, each occurrence. So each time that has been said and done based on false statements of me being a Russian agent is a federal crime, and it's a major one. So that's all getting referred this week. In fact, it got referred semi-officially about a month ago. But at this point, we now have proof of it because I've had members of Congress confirm it to people, both me and people on my team. And so this then creates a serious issue because the people who think they were going to just play ufology 101 child's play, and some of them are unwitting players, perhaps, and some are witting, knowing what they're doing. They're now in a world of trouble in terms of a federal crime, multiple federal crimes, because they have been facilitating the cover-up, lying to members of Congress, and influencing offices like Aero and other offices, as well as key committees in the Senate and the House, and deterring them from being able to get to the truth by, in fact, there was a member of Congress I've worked with for a number of years who said to another member who I met with 2 weeks ago, who said, "Oh, you can't talk to Dr. Greer. We've learned he's a Russian espionage agent." Now, this is serious because what that is not about me. It's about the fact that I'm sitting on this mountain of evidence and whistleblower testimony, and it is precisely what the House Oversight, Senate Intelligence, and Armed Services Committees want. And it's precisely what the White House and law enforcement and Department of Justice want. And those people have gone in making up these false allegations, which are provably false. It's been checked out through intel and law enforcement. This is all completely false. And they continue to do this. So now, I've been watching this for a couple years. Let me just say this. And my attitude is, let's give them enough rope to hang themselves. Because these people are not just interested ufologists. These are people who are acting on behalf of a criminal operation, making false statements about the founder of the entire modern disclosure movement, me, to deter. I don't care about myself. I care that it has resulted in people being blocked from getting the whistleblower testimony and the evidence that they are asking for, because it put a chill through the system that if they met with me, they would be meeting with a foreign espionage agent. That is what has happened in the last while. Now, it's been going on a while. Now we have the proof and the statements from members of Congress that this is in fact what's been said. And this is a very big problem. I don't think they realize, these operators, how much trouble they're in.
Wow. You're being attacked from all sides, and with the
Well, that's
background.
been going on for 30 years. I mean, I expect that.
When I talked to Tim Burchett, he said that he believed that there was a lot of people being sent to his office to give him disinformation, and they were actually put there for that purpose to lead them down the wrong road. Let's
Of
look at.
course, I mean, you have people who we know have been doing this, like Elizondo and that whole crowd.
Did you see that photograph that Elizondo put out, and he showed it to Congress, and it turned out he said it was this big, massive flying saucer, but it turned out to be an irrigation crop circle, and
Well, it
he's
was,
putting
yeah.
it out as evidence. What do you make of you should be
Look,
vetting the information
this is
before
the same.
displaying it.
Let me give everyone a little history lesson. Back in the 50s, the CIA engaged Dr. Menzel at Harvard, a famous astronomer. And he engaged people who were amateur astronomers to throw pie plant pans up in the sky and take photos of them, claim they were flying saucers, and then come out and prove they weren't because it would discredit the whole field. Look, this tactic of what you just described, nothing new under the sun. And if you go through this briefing document, folks, please learn to read. I don't want to sound like your school teacher or professor, but people need to read, and every word of it, because it's been curated and these cases are in there. So again, I'm not dealing with conspiracy theories and speculation. This is a tried and true tactic and strategy that's been used since the 50s for 70 years.
Let's take a quick look right here at asymmetric disclosure, the trailer. Guys, watch this.
So you really have to have a select committee in the Congress and a special office in the White House to really master all this information and unpack it, and then take the action to stand down these malicious programs. And that is going to be a very heavy lift and a very dangerous operation.
The only way you're going to get to it is somebody at that executive level that says enough is enough, cut the money off, bring these people in, let's go.
Maybe just give them a threat, a very light threat. Let them know, like, this is not to be talked about any further. And if you do, something can happen.
You're either on the side of the law or you're not. And if not, which we can prove they are, you strip them of all that cover.
All we need is one to be accurate. And this whole concept of UFO crash retrieval non-existing completely falls apart.
They're doing stuff for spite, they're doing stuff to protect certain individuals or certain industries, and it's detrimental to all of us.
Oh yeah, people are all talking about World War III and all that. Well, if we don't change the trajectory we're on, we're going to be in a big problem. Nobody with any sense wants fortune and glory dealing with this. That's the mistake that they all make.
All right, we're back. And one of the moments in that trailer, some people come to me and go, wow, where does Steve get this information? But one of the key factors of the documentary, you talk about this pushing of a button that could cause catastrophic destruction across the planet. You're talking about that they're trying to skip an asteroid off the surface of the ocean to create mass tsunamis. Can you get to what was that operation called? How'd you get this knowledge? Because that's an explosive part of the documentary, Asymmetric Disclosure.
Well, look, there's a whole, let's call them a whole basket of technologies that have been developed since the 50s that deal with mass control, gravity control, things like this. And we know that part of that organization wants to create worldwide chaos so that they can step into the chaos and create a sort of a global totalitarian organization that runs the planet. That's exactly what the warm-up 9/11 was, and I think COVID was largely exploited by those same interests that way. But this is the big one. Now, being able to do what that I've had back in the 90s, I had an intelligence source who described that program where they could move an asteroid and have it hit or go near the Earth. But then, back in about 2 years ago, or a little over, Jake Barber himself had been read into an operation like that, and he thought I'd be shocked. I said, no, I knew about this in the late 90s, and that there was an operation that had the ability to move that kind of object. In that case, the ETs came in and moved it out of the way. And so I always tell people, even though they're always being defamed and all kinds of mythologies around aliens, in reality, they've saved our bacon more times than you can imagine, both in terms of preventing nuclear catastrophes, but also geophysical catastrophes. But here's a problem. What happens when our technologies reach the point of parity, as good as the ET technologies, and then we're forcing them out of the arena? Who's then protecting the Earth from these psychopaths, this transnational criminal organization? My information is that it's unlikely we're going to go 2 more years without some catastrophic events happening unless we get not only asymmetric disclosure to prime the pump of official disclosure and get the bureaucrats and the government people, engaged fully. So, that's just part of it. But the other part of it is that people always misinterpret. I've made the point for decades. The false flag operations began in the late 50s and early 60s. What do I mean? Go look at what we have. And again, this whole case is also in here. It's the Norton Air Force Base, where the air show, where there were Brad Sorensen was there, and was the 1988, and there were 3 man-made UFOs in this hangar in a compartmented area for this air show at Norton Air Force Base in California, which has now been decommissioned and closed. But those were from the late 50s, early 60s, because the components inside were all from the Mercury era, right? Like the Mercury capsule. And those had been out in space and around, not interstellar, but around the solar system. And they were the older models, and they were wanting more money to build the newer ones. Now remember, this is 1988. Those were from the late 50s, early 60s. So there have been UFO events like the Tic Tac and these others, as well as abductions, as well as false flag operations that are made to look alien that aren't, that launched in the late 50s, early 60s. So the psychological warfare part of the false flag began in the 50s. That's what's key. And now it's grown apace to where the technologies we have are so advanced, they're way more advanced than that clunky alien reproduction vehicle from the early 60s. We're talking about objects that would be almost indistinguishable from an extraterrestrial vehicle. And the people I know who have been on these retrieval teams, multiple different people, don't know each other. They've said that. They say they're so good that you really would be hard-pressed to tell the difference between an alien one or extraterrestrial one or NHI one and a man-made one. Well, this is dangerous because if the people in our mainstream Department of Defense and mainstream CIA and mainstream political operations don't know this, they could easily mistake a man-made false flag operation as an alien or NHI attack. And in fact, that is the master plan that they've been working since 1953 and 1954 for 70 years. And the psychological warfare part of it has been, in many ways, unwittingly, by ufology, has captured all the interest in this and created this myth of an alien threat and all this stuff that Werner von Braun warned about when he spoke to my friend Carol Rosin back in 1974 and said they're going to launch an alien attack and it's all a lie and a threat from outer space, but it's to aggregate this sort of fascistic totalitarian power around the issue because that's the ultimate card to play. It's the last card to play, is what she was told, the final card in this whole geopolitical game of bringing the world together, but not in a golden age of peace and prosperity and enlightenment, but in an age of militarism and totalitarian control. So this is what the battle really is. That is the real battle going on. And, little by little, it'll get acknowledged, like the Tic Tac. Years ago, I spoke to one of the pilots, the F-18 Hornet, David Fravor, and I have a witness to this conversation, and it was interesting because he says there's no way that was ours. and I work for an aerospace company now. We don't have anything like that. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but I mean, if the president and the CI directors some of them that I briefed, and the head of the DIA aren't read into this, I'm not sure why a jet pilot would be, right? So now they've all come around and said, oh my God, that was a Lockheed object. And it was operating in a restricted military operating area so that it would test our systems. So this cabal of criminal operators do things deliberately in military operating areas to see how the mainstream Department of Defense assets would react. They're testing their system. I'm saying this for the first time, perhaps, this bluntly, but they're basically testing their systems to see how we react and what the psychological effect is all the way up through the chain of command, all the way into the Pentagon, as well as the boots on the ground, Hornet pilots and guys. And so, this is why the knowledge about this information and knowledge is so important, not just for the general public, but for our leaders, for our military guys. 99 point plus whatever percent of them are patriotic, wonderful people, for sure. And even the people in these covert black programs, they're patriotic, wonderful people, but they got pulled in when they were younger and they got trapped. This is why one of them said to me a couple years ago, thank you for what you're doing for those of us stuck on the other side. And he was talking about being stuck in this illegal black world of criminal operations. And they want out. They want out, but we have to bring them a pathway out, which we have now.
Yeah,
but it's still dangerous. There's still a lot of fear. I mean, people are afraid for their families and themselves, and this is why I'm a little getting impatient. Let me just put it that way, and I'm being mild here. You know me better than that. I'm about to break my leash about the foot dragging on getting some of these federal operations up to speed and actually moving on the information they have. They have it. They know it's real. For example, there are people, and I think there are some unwitting people involved with this, who are providing false information or saying that I'm a Russian agent, like David Grush. I think guys like him get pulled in to this cabal of ne'er-do-wells, and then the next thing you know, they're in a world of trouble by repeating and saying things that are federal crimes. You cannot do it. You cannot do it. And I'm putting this out there today so that people, they need to come clean, they need to stand down, and they can get immunity. But if they persist in this behavior, it's going to be very, very dangerous because you're involving yourself in activities that are clearly federal criminal offenses.
Yeah, tread very carefully if you're gonna, say something and they're false accusations, or you're trying to make a narrative to, shut down what Dr. Greer's all about and all his people that are behind him and the firsthand witnesses, all the military firsthand witnesses that are putting their life on the line, and to try and discredit Steve at the very top with these false allegations. This is serious business, and I could understand. Yeah. I could hear that you're kind of angry about it. Who wants to be?
I'm angry because we've seen this go on for a long time, and it's reached the point where it's gotten confirmed to me. The reason some of these key committees have not received all the evidence and looked at it is because these people deliberately lied, and that's where it's a federal offense. When you deceive a federal investigation, whether it's congressional or any other, on a subject like this, by creating a provably false lie and make statements to the fact that I'm a Russian espionage agent, or the flavor of the day now is I'm a Mossad agent. It's just ludicrous on the face of it, but it actually, believe it or not, has a very chilling effect in those circles, and it blocks the investigation. So you're interfering, you're obstructing justice, number one, and you're interfering with, and you're making false statements to federal officials. Members of Congress are federal officials. They take the oath of office. And there is a investigation going on in the Congress on this, and they have been gaslit and lied to and deceived. But this crosses the line where you provide partial information, you provide a false narrative, but when you start blocking a whole cache of dozens of whistleblowers and evidence from getting into where it needs to go by stating that someone who is an innocent civilian such as myself, who gave up my medical career to do this without compensation, and you say that person is a foreign espionage agent of Russia or Israel, this is serious criminal activity. That's all I have to say about it.
All right, let's take a look at a clip from Asymmetric Disclosure. And again, when you support and watch the documentary, it's supporting disclosure and getting the word out. Take a look at this.
We are back with a Fox News alert. We're waiting to see how Israel responds to Iran's unprecedented attack this weekend. The IDF says this launch of so many missiles, cruise missiles, and UAVs into the territory of the state of Israel will be met with a response.
World War III has never been closer than it is right now.
Oh yeah, people are all talking about World War III and all that. Well, if we don't change the trajectory we're on, we're going to be in a big problem. And the biggest one is the fact that there are covert programs targeting ET vehicles, and those programs are jeopardizing the Earth for sure.
The U.S. military shooting down a fourth unidentified high-altitude object Sunday.
The military needs to have a plan to not only determine what's out there, but determine the dangers that go with it.
We've warned of this for over 30 years. Werner von Braun warned about it. Since I spoke with you last, I was at a two Western black sites where they have operations that are actively targeting and, in a sense, hijacking ET vehicles with some very high-tech systems, and then moving them into an area where they're struck with electromagnetic pulse scalar weapons.
All right, that was with regards to World War III. We're talking about it. There's a lot of tension in the Middle East, the United States, Israel, all this military action, a lot of deaths out there. Mm-hmm. And we're on the verge of something that can be prevented. But in the documentary, you're stating that maybe, there's no guarantees in life, right? So either we do it now and get disclosure and fix this planet, or we might be in some big trouble here.
I think we're in for major catastrophic consequences of doing nothing. Now, one thing I was told back in the first year of the Bush administration in 2001, before 9/11, I was at a meeting at the University Club there down the street from the White House with a friend of President Bush, George W. Bush, and we were in there. Donald Rumsfeld was there having lunch that day and whatnot, and he said, "Look, here's the thing, Dr. Greer. No matter whether they're conservative, liberal, libertarian, when they get into the White House, they govern conservatively, as in, let's not rock the boat. Let's not disrupt the status quo." And that seems like a safe thing to do until you realize what the consequences are of doing nothing. And the problem is the analysis never gets to that level, because there are people who will go into the White House and to the Oval or into the Situation Room or the PIOC or into a SCIF and say, look, if this comes out, it's going to cause all these effects. It's going to be too much to manage. It's too big to let out. And let's just kick the ball down, the court, let someone else pick it up in the next term. Now, I've recently heard that said about the current administration. And I won't say more than that, except to say there's no way this is going to get kicked down to late 2028. I think we're going to run out of time to resolve these problems, but I don't think that the president and the Congress know this yet. I don't think the weight of this and the timeline of how long can you let a criminal organization engage in this kind of activity, including targeting and downing extraterrestrial vehicles, with increasingly lethal and accurate quantum potential weapons that go beyond the speed of light, frankly. How long can that continue before the universe kicks back, right? And I think that we're in a situation where the leadership has been gaslit on this as well. That they continue, and I think even some of the whistleblowers who were going to come forward late last year, early this year, have been gaslit and misled. They don't seem to understand that, the time, you're not going to drag this out for another 70 years or even another 10. My information and the information from my intel sources that are excellent and current is that we'll be lucky if we get past 2027 with the status quo and this not changing. And specifically, let me be clear, what needs to be stood down and stopped immediately are the criminal activities involving targeting and destroying extraterrestrial vehicle and assets and targeting out in space, but also doing things on the planet that are very dangerous with these high-tech technologies, not just the asteroid problem, but other things that they're doing that we don't need to go into, but also victimizing innocent civilians. I've been at a couple of black sites where they target ET craft, where on occasion they hit a civilian private airplane and kill all the people on board, and it crashes. And they take the bodies and incinerate them and the craft to powder. And then through cutouts, they make a missing person report. This has happened many times. So, everyone talks about, the aliens are a threat to air safety. No, they're not. They know how to navigate around a 737. Come on. The real problem are these covert programs. Their UFOs are a threat to aviation. Their weapon systems are a threat to private pilots. Their operations are a threat to geophysical stability. And the withholding of the technologies are a threat to world peace and to the biosphere, because we're still using 1800s fuel. You can go to Amazon Prime or Tubi and see The Lost Century, and you'll see this whole unpacking of 100 years of energy technologies that have been withheld viciously, up to and including murdering people, which would have saved the biosphere and eliminated poverty, which would have given us a stable and just social order in the world so that we wouldn't be in endless wars. So this is a part and parcel of the problem. This is why this issue is the fulcrum. It's the thing that tips everything in another direction. And it can go badly or it can go into a golden age that's amazing. And you know what? I hate to say it, we're going to all collectively have to make that choice. I call it the choice. It's a big choice we have to make. Everyone listening, but also our leaders and the people in these covert programs. Where do you want to come down on? Catastrophe or a golden enlightened age on the planet? It's really that stark of a choice.
While we're in DC, and we're there in the beginning of the year and at the end, all the way leading up to the transition of the president, his first day in the Oval Office, Trump. And we cover the whole year of what ufology was all about, especially in the Congress and the fight for disclosure. And in asymmetric disclosure, I tracked down Tim Burchett with a question, and we're going to share this clip in just a bit. He's kind of stumped on the question, and he doesn't know how to answer. Let's just play this clip from asymmetric. Watch this.
Okay.
But see, no one in Congress has gotten serious about that. It's an open question whether the current president will, and time will tell. But I'm hoping there will be a critical number of these people who will come forward in this asymmetric disclosure, asymmetric meaning that it's not going to come out of the White House or Congress. It's going to come out from out here, from the people who are concerned, citizens who've learned they're in an illegal project, who want to set it right? So I'll tell you what one of them said to me. They were driving me around in an armored vehicle. And he said, "Thank you for what you're doing for those of us stuck on the other side. They're stuck in this illegal black world and they want out." And that's what we're trying to do, is give them a path out. But the Congress has totally dropped the ball on this. Now we'll see if the incoming president will do it.
I interviewed jet pilots that say they saw something. And they said, "We saw things, sir, that were were very strange. Like a round ball, but it wasn't a comet or a meteor. It was something. And it was going 4 times faster than an F-22, which is a very fast plane, you know.
So you've been to some of these classified meetings in the skiff. Obviously, you've seen things. Can you go into any detail? What's the most insightful thing that you've seen that compels you to believe that we're not alone?
Just let me figure out how to say this.
All right, and we're back. Asymmetric disclosure. It's available right now across the planet. The link is below. Again, we dropped the price more than half right now. So, when you support the documentary, you support disclosure. Tim was kind of stumped on that question I gave him. What was the most incredible thing you've seen in a skiff? There's evidence that they're being presented. What do you think they're actually showing them in the skiffs? Are they showing them videos of the Tic Tac, or are they actually seeing alien ET craft?
Well, the most important briefing in the skiff happened after the film was finished. And those were some law enforcement people in there that largely had my information, but the people in the skiff didn't know it. And that's when the members came out and said, wow, this is a 10 out of 10. And it's dispositive. Now, remember, there's a lot of information I can give to federal investigators or to key members of a committee that we can't release to the public because I can't violate people's confidentialities that I've agreed to. That's not because of any national security obligation. It's because if someone says, please keep this secret, my name and all this, I will. But if it's someone who's a relevant, federal official looking into this, then I feel obligated to provide it, and I have. And it's everything you can imagine. It's the sites, it's the craft, it's the bodies, it's where these operations are. It's what the man-made craft are capable of. It's what the ET craft actually look like. And frankly, if you read the briefing document and look at this, which is every person who's a named person involved with crash retrievals and what have you going back 70 years, you're going to see that fleshed out with a whole bunch of more information, but also with current information about who's creating criminal activities and where. So there's a lot. Now, one of the things I've said to them, and now they agree with me, the members of Congress, don't do this in a skiff. You wouldn't afford a top secret setting to the Gambino family that's selling heroin, right? Why? I mean, or if it's a criminal operation, why do you afford them the courtesy of this being disclosed in some secret way? No, it should be out there in a public open hearing with subpoenas. And I have said that if you don't have subpoenas and an open hearing, you're wasting your time. You might as well refer all of this to DOJ and FBI and sick them on it, because it's basically ineffectual. So that's the other thing. Everyone listening, you need to write to your senators, 2 senators and your member of the House and the president, and say, this should be open hearings and it needs to be openly disclosed, because the people have a right to know. And remember, the reason I'm doing I'm out on a limb saying a lot of this today, Eisenhower, when he gave that final speech, Beware the Military-Industrial Complex, one of the things he said was that only an informed citizenry can prevent the loss of democracy. So, he's right. He was right in 1961, the day he left office, because, by the way, he had been betrayed by this cabal. That's when it all went illegal back in the late 50s. And Eisenhower was shoved aside. Kennedy was shoved aside. They then killed Kennedy. They killed RFK. They killed Marilyn Monroe. They killed Forrestal. And they continue to kill people. And what I keep saying is, where the hell is law enforcement? Now, I've been saying this for 30 years. These are treasonous high crimes and what have you. Why are these people untouchable? Why in the world do we have a Department of Justice and an FBI if they're going to sit on their hands when the worst crimes in the history of the United States of America are being, going forward unchecked. So this is where I am becoming impatient, because there is no excuse for the foot dragging. And at this point, I actually think the people are going to have to weigh in on this. The media needs to weigh in on this. I will cooperate with any media and provide them anything they want, up to, but not including confidential names and methods that I've been told not to disclose because of honoring people's requests for their own privacy and safety. But I'm willing to stick my neck out, but some of these people aren't. And I mean, one of our witnesses recently, who was going to come up and testify over to one of the Senate groups, committees, when his wife found out, she says, I am divorcing you. I am divorcing you if you go to that meeting, because it's too dangerous and we have children. This is what I deal with. And I understand it. But that's why subpoenas have to happen. That's why there has to be federal interrogation, where the people are interrogated and then they don't have a choice, right? Right now, the only people who are coming up are people who are willing to stick their necks out, who are enormously courageous people. I have 3 new whistleblowers coming to DC next week, and we're meeting and we're doing a whole thing. But it's risky, and they're scared, and they have PTSD over it. They really do. And I understand that. I mean, but it's got to happen. But this is why there needs to be subpoenas, because then I have to. So then if a family member or someone says, oh, well, I'm going to divorce you if you give the testimony, they go, well, I have to. So This is called, you have to compel the testimony. You have to compel the evidence. People holding this evidence, you compel it. We're out of time to go, pretty please, will you do this? I've been doing that for 30 some years. Now it needs to be, you must do this. We need that document. We need the schematic of that underground base. We need that data on the material. We need all this operational detail, and they are compelled by law to do so. And if they don't, then they are colluding with a criminal conspiracy. That's what RICO is. So let me explain RICO a little bit. If you are involved, opportune, or facilitate criminal enterprises, even unwittingly, if you do it more than once, then you are complicit and can be charged with all the crimes of the RICO. Now, the good news is federal law enforcement is extending immunity as well as protection and monitoring for people wanting to come forward. This is why I'm asking people, don't delay, please come forward. It's better that you come forward voluntarily now than that you get eventually rounded up and interrogated. That's what I think people need to decide what side of this you want to fall on. And this is also true with people who have been going up there spreading lies. You need to this is kind of we say in the South, a coming to Jesus moment, where you need to decide if you're going to stay on that path because it's in violation of multiple federal laws, or if you're going to get right and do the right thing, and not continue to spread lies and disinformation. The question is, this is a matter of what people decide to do. I think many of them, they kind of don't have a choice, because I think someone's got something on them and they're forcing them to say and do the things they're doing. This kind of blackmail and bribery happens all the time in this business. And by the way, it's happening with a couple members of Congress and at least one member of the Trump cabinet that I know that's going on. I won't say more than that, but it's a very serious problem. I think the other really key thing for people to begin to understand is the only way this logjam of secrecy gets broken is a asymmetric disclosure of enough whistleblowers handing off the information. Let me say something here. I don't think the people holding that evidence need to be named. The evidence will speak for itself. If they want to do it as confidential informants or anonymously, no problem. We can receive it. We can get it to the right people. And if it comes to me, here's my promise. It'll end up on our blockchain system where the whole world will see it, right? Yeah. Because I'm not going to hold that back. Go through my archive and see what's in there. Most people have it. If you go to Disclosure Project Intelligence or dpiarchive.com, you'll see everything everyone thinks they're asking for. It's already in there.
Yeah, you don't sit on it. You put it out immediately.
Yes.
And, that's how you roll. The blockchain system
Well,
is
but that's
protection
also helps
itself.
keep you alive, right?
Yeah, it's protection. It's like you start. It's
So
that
let me
my
say another
precious
thing.
thing, right?
I know people holding this kind of evidence and they think it's dangerous to hand it over. No, it's dangerous for them to hold it.
Yes.
Okay, because nobody knows who they are. A lot of people know what we're doing, but if it's out there publicly, then it de-targets them. This is the concept that is very hard for people who live in that world of classified information where they've been brainwashed to keep this secret, even though it's an illegal classification, totally illegal, is that they have to keep it so secret. But by having it, but wanting to move it forward, but being half in and half out, they're actually at great risk. Whereas if it gets put out there, it doesn't have to be attacked. No one actually cares about the individuals. They don't. No one cares about me. I don't care about these disinformation agents saying I'm a Russian agent. I don't know them personally. I don't care. People care about the mission. They care about the mission of secrecy and running the earth into the direction of a totalitarian superstate versus disclosure and moving into another direction. That's what they care about. And so if you were to turn over through asymmetric disclosure, this kind of dispositive evidence, you don't have to have your name attached to it. Why? It can be just on the evidence should speak for itself if it's that clear. And we're talking documents and images and not vague stuff, right? Clear. And we know that people have that. Now the question is, will they do it because they know they're tracked and perhaps they're worried they'll be killed or their families will be. But this is where they need to connect to me and I hand them over to the protective detail and to the law enforcement people. Because what's set up is that if anyone moves on any of these whistleblowers we have, that's going to be caught red-handed. We have this, I won't say more than this because it's OPSEC, operational security. Anyone who pulls a stunt like that will be caught in real time and arrested. Listen to what I just said. So that nasty business, that's now being tracked. Anyone who approaches us, they're put in that system and they are gonna, anyone who tries to pull a stunt like that, it's gonna be caught in real time. I'm not gonna say more than that, but the system is in place to do it.
All right, let's once again take a quick clip right here at asymmetric disclosure. Guys, watch this.
I've concluded that since there's no bandwidth in the Congress at this time to be able to do proper hearings, because what you saw recently was just a dog and pony show. Is ridiculous. Anyone who would look at the 2001 Disclosure Project event, you'll see 22 witnesses, every one of them more substantial firsthand than anyone who was up here recently on Capitol Hill. So, you know, everyone in my world are going, and particularly the military and the top secret whistleblowers are going, this is just ridiculous.
Oh, I always say dadgummit after these miserable hearings. They're bogus. Look, I could have answered every one of those dadgum questions, and you know it, and I know it. I know more about this than the average bear, I guess. Maybe that's a scary thought, but this thing's a cover-up.
Was I a little bit disappointed in some of the responses from the witnesses? Yes, we got some great stuff, but you know, I'm not interested in hearing about people's books. I'm interested in hearing about whether or not people can answer the questions, because we are trying to get this into the archives so that people have access to the information. And so I wish there was a little less pitching and more talking.
So what's next?
Here's what's next. We've concluded that, and we have someone who's under non-official cover, very senior aerospace and intelligence.
All right, we're back. We're running out of time, but I wanted to get a couple questions in before we get going. But again, sure. Asymmetric disclosure, it's available, and the link is below. It's a genius link. You could watch it on Google Play, Amazon, iTunes, and again, we brought the price down dramatically so we could get a more broad watch on this. And again, it's supporting disclosure when you rent this documentary. Basically, I
want to be sure a little bit of it is. Yeah.
What is the singular reason why people should watch Asymmetric Disclosure?
Well, I think people need to get educated on this subject very quickly and then pivot to being activists. So, I mean, when I say an activist, I mean you actually pick up your pen and paper, well, or your computer, and write to your members of Congress and network to other people. The other reason is pass it on to other folks who may have been involved in a base or a covert program at an aerospace company or a contractor, and say, look, you know, this needs your attention, and maybe you can help be part of this movement of whistleblowers coming forward, because we get new whistleblowers every week or two or three. And so I think that this needs to become, instead of a trickle, sort of a wave of people defecting from these illegal programs and coming forward with the evidence, so that asymmetric disclosure then primes the pump for official disclosure out of the U.S. government. And, you know, look, we live in a democracy. I think people need to be educated. They need to have an informed citizenry, as Eisenhower said, but then they need to take the next step. And this is where most people drop the ball. They don't take that next step. And I hear from members of Congress all the time, we want to hear from our constituents. We need to hear more from the public, right? And so, you know, if you don't do that, if you're just sitting around passively, entertaining yourself on YouTube with cats playing the piano or whatever it is people do, that isn't going to cut it. I mean, we really need people, and we also need people to pick up the mantle and help us with this campaign for disclosure. We're going to need to raise, in the next 4 months, about $1 million to carry what we're carrying. And that's a lot for a private, organization like ours. And I'm a retired doctor. I can't do it. So we're going to need that. Anyone listening who can help, please contact me at drstephengreer.com, because the amount of, let's say, overhead and expenses we're incurring to make all this happen, the investigation and the transport and everything for all these whistleblowers and all that we're doing, it ain't free. I got news for people. It's a very labor and expensive business. And so that is something that we're going to need to have more public support on. And really, somebody ought to write a check for 10 times that, just because of the consequence of what this subject is. But at a minimum, we need people to go out there and help fundraise for us to get Disclosure Project properly funded, because we're operating with 1.25 staff people, volunteers, and a very limited budget, very, very small budget.
Yeah, and supporting and watching the documentary also helps. Let me say this. Basically, you're the sheriff in town. Do you want to put anybody on notice? You want to drop any names, Steve? Like who should be, if they're continuing to do what they're doing?
I already did. I don't think I need to do it again.
All right.
and their associates. I'll just say this. We know who they are. Anyone going up to the Pentagon, Capitol Hill, in the White House circles, stating these false statements to block our evidence and our whistleblowers to getting to the official investigators of this subject, are committing multiple federal felonies. And this is a heads up. You need to stop it.
Any last words, Steve?
No, I'm just saying right now things are going very quickly, and a lot of it I can't go into publicly, but there's wonderful movement on the investigation, law enforcement, criminal investigation side. Huge, but it's all very, very quiet. I think it needs to get supported further, and the way you do that is the public and the members of Congress step in, and there needs to be like a serious Watergate type hearing with subpoenas. And boy, do I have a list. I have 50 people for them to subpoena to be brought in, and it would be the hearing of the millennium. But that is the way that happens, is that the public and the media are going to have to start covering this in a way commensurate with how serious the situation is, and it's a very serious situation. So I would say we need all hands on deck, and we need all the help folks can offer us.
Appreciate you, Steve, for being on the front line. Again, you're being attacked, and nothing's new there. But again, trying to attack you, and then by default and proxy, prevent these people, these whistleblowers, and the evidence that they have to come forward to Congress and stop that potential flood of information.
Yes, and
criminal.
That's the red line that got crossed.
Yes.
When you make up a serious allegation of someone like myself being a foreign Russian espionage agent in order to chill the investigation by members of Congress and other departments of the federal government, that is, I want to be clear, you can call me every name in the book. Doing that with that intention and result is a felony each occurrence. And it's already been referred to law enforcement for investigation.
I'm really glad that we addressed these situations and these accusations against you in this podcast today. And I want to remind everybody, asymmetric disclosure, it's available. The link is below. We're going to share one more clip along with the trailer. Take a look.
So you really have to have a select committee in the Congress and a special office in the White House to really master all this information and unpack it, and then take the action to stand down these malicious programs. And that is going to be a very heavy lift and a very dangerous operation.
The only way you're going to get to it is somebody at that executive level that says enough is enough, cut the money off, bring these people in, let's go.
Maybe just give them a threat, a very light threat. Let them know, like, this is not to be talked about any further. And if you do, something can happen.
You're either on the side of the law or you're not. And if not, which we can prove they are, you strip them of all that cover.
All we need is one to be accurate. And this whole concept of UFO crash retrieval non-existing completely falls apart.
They're doing stuff for spite. They're doing stuff to protect certain individuals or certain industries. And it's detrimental to all of us.
Oh yeah, people are all talking about World War III and all that. Well, if we don't change the trajectory we're on, we're going to be in a big problem. Nobody with any sense wants fortune and glory dealing with this. That's the mistake that they all make.
All right, we're back with Dr. Stephen Greer, and let me tell you, Asymmetric Disclosure, it's the documentary of the year. I urge everybody to watch it. Stephen, you be safe out there. Where are you, in Virginia at the moment?
Yeah, at my farm out in Virginia. I'm going to D.C. later this week, yeah.
All right, well, safe travels, and keep your head up. You're doing
all right.
great work over there. I know it's not easy, but
okay.
let's keep in touch.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
All right.